The chamber of the Galactic Council floated above a world of silver oceans and golden clouds. It was the heart of civilization, where hundreds of alien races gathered to speak, trade, and rule. Massive columns of light spiraled upward, casting shifting colors on walls carved with ancient languages older than Earth itself. At the center, under a dome of shimmering glass, stood one lone human. Ambassador Mara Ellison. She was not a soldier, not a warlord, just a diplomat, a small woman wrapped in the white and blue of the United Earth Federation. Her dark eyes held steady, but there was tension in her shoulders. Around her, the air felt thick with disdain. The chamber echoed with 1,000 alien murmurs, some curious, some angry, most dismissive. A tall creature of scales and gold armor leaned forward from his seat. His voice was deep, like metal grinding on stone. Humanity grows too fast. You burn worlds like fire through dry grass. You spread without respect for balance. Another delegate, a being of soft light and vapor, spoke next, voice rippling through the air like waves. You have no place among the elder races. Your kind was still climbing trees when we mastered the stars. The room rumbled with approval. The humans had known this would not be easy. They were newcomers to the Council, the youngest species to reach interstellar flight. Their rise had been fast, too fast. In less than 2 centuries, humans had built colonies across 10 systems, invented ships that challenged the old empires, and proved they would not stay quiet. Mara stood firm. "We seek peace," she said. Her voice was calm but carried far. "We only wish to stand among you as equals. Humanity means no harm." The silence that followed was heavy, a silence filled with contempt. The Speaker of the Council, a being known as Veiler of the Triune, rose from his high throne. His 3 faces turned toward her, each expression unreadable. "Peace," he repeated softly. "You speak of peace, yet your fleets patrol near our borders. You build weapons that even our oldest species fear." "They are for defense," Mara replied, her voice shaking just slightly. "We know we are not trusted, but we have learned from history, the strong must be ready or they will fall." A deep laugh rolled through the chamber. It was not kind. The Sorinth representative, tall and sharp as glass, hissed. "You speak like conquerors, you build like conquerors, you think like conquerors. We cannot allow a predator to sit among prey." Mara's hands tightened at her sides. She had been warned they would provoke her, that they would try to make her lash out to prove their point, but she breathed slowly. "Predators? No, we are survivors. We came from a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to fight storms, hunger, and each other. That is why we are still here." Her words echoed, and for a brief second, something like respect flickered in a few alien eyes. But Veiler raised a clawed hand. "Enough." He looked at the Council, at the 1,000 species seated in their shining thrones. "The humans grow restless," he said. "Their colonies expand without permission. Their technology threatens the balance. Their words promise peace, yet their actions whisper war." He turned to Mara. "And you humans speak of equality, yet you do not understand what that means among the stars. You are young, reckless, dangerous." Mara's heart beat hard in her chest. "We are all dangerous," she said quietly. "Every species here has fought to survive. The only difference is that we remember what it's like to be weak." The Council erupted in noise, arguments, protests, shouts in 100 alien tongues. Veiler's voices boomed above them all. "Then let us remind you." Guards in black armor appeared, their weapons humming with blue energy. They surrounded Mara. She stepped back, shocked. "What is this?" "The Council has voted," Veiler said. "Your species will not be permitted to remain among us. You will be removed." "Removed," she whispered. "You can't mean." The Sorinth hissed again, eyes glinting. "You bring war in your blood. The galaxy must be protected from you." Mara looked around the chamber. No help. No allies, only cold faces watching her, some with satisfaction, some with pity. She thought of Earth, of the cities shining over blue oceans, of her daughter waiting for her return. Her voice trembled, but she held her chin high. "If you do this, if you harm me, you will regret it." Veiler tilted his 3 heads. "Threats from an infant species." "It's not a threat," she said. "It's a warning." She didn't resist when the guards took her arms. They dragged her to the center platform, the same place where countless judgments had been passed through the ages. Above her, a sphere of light began to spin, growing brighter. Mara closed her eyes. "Tell Earth," she whispered, "we tried." The light swallowed her. And then she was gone. Across the galaxy, the broadcast spread like wildfire. Every human colony saw it, every ship, every soldier, every mother and child. They saw their envoy, their voice, vanish into nothing. The Council called it a necessary act, a containment measure, a small sacrifice for galactic peace. But on Earth there was only silence. The President said nothing, the admirals said nothing, the people mourned, then waited. For 2 weeks no message left the Sol system. No ship departed. The stars around Earth went dark, every transmission jammed, every signal dead. And then one morning, every screen on every world turned black. A single phrase appeared in bold white letters. Terran Command ACKNOWLEDGES, the death of our envoy. Response authorized, Omega Protocol. No one knew what it meant, not yet. But the admirals did, the generals did. The quiet men and women who had trained their entire lives for the day humanity might have to defend itself, they understood. Factories roared back to life. Shipyards that had slept since the frontier wars began to glow once more. Orbital forges awakened, building ships whose names had been whispered only in rumor. Retribution, Hammerfall, Void Reaper. The stars above Earth flickered as thousands of engines ignited at once. And across the galaxy, in the halls of the Council, unease grew. They would not dare, Vaylor said to his advisors, watching the darkened sector near Sol. They are too few, too primitive. But even as he spoke, the stars themselves seemed to blink, not with light but with movement, a shadow spreading outward. Something was coming. Something old, something patient, something human. And it carried with it the memory of a woman who stood alone in the heart of the galaxy and said the words no one listened to. We seek peace. The Council thought they had silenced her. They did not know those words were about to become a war cry. The stars around Earth went dark. No signals, no trade, no transmissions. For the first time in 100 years, the Sol system vanished from the galactic network. Even the great relay stations that circled Jupiter and Mars were silent. Those who tried to reach out heard only static. The galaxy waited. Some thought humanity was broken, that they had been taught their place. Others whispered that Earth was planning something terrible. But 2 weeks passed and nothing came. The Council called it peace. The press called it justice. And yet in the cold edges of the galaxy, captains and soldiers of other races looked at the dark space around Sol and felt unease. Because silence, true silence, from humans was never a good sign. Beneath the clouds of Earth, in the hidden command halls under the Andes Mountains, Admiral Aisha Ron stood before a wall of holographic stars. Her dark uniform bore no medals, no symbols of rank. Only a small silver pin shaped like a broken chain. Before her stood the members of the Terran High Command, men and women who had seen war, loss, and survival. Each of them watched in grim silence as the broadcast replayed again on the wall. Ambassador Mara Ellison standing proud, her final words, the flash of light that consumed her. The recording ended, no one spoke. Then Admiral Ron's voice broke the silence. They murdered her, she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were burning. They executed our envoy knowing the galaxy was watching. They wanted to show power. She looked around the table. They will learn what power truly is. Across the room, General Torres leaned forward, his cybernetic arm clinking softly. Are we certain? He asked quietly. If we launch the Omega Protocol, there is no turning back. Billions will die. Ron's gaze didn't waver. So did Mara. So will we all if we let them believe we are prey. Silence again, heavy, inevitable. Then the vote came. One by one, hands were raised. Unanimous. A signal was sent deep into the Earth's network, encrypted 1,000 times over. It reached Luna Command, Mars Defense, and the massive orbital yards beyond Neptune. The code was only 2 words long. Omega Protocol. And everything changed. On Mars, factories that had been silent for decades came alive with thunder. Giant cranes lifted the skeletons of warships from dry docks. Crews moved like ants across the red dust, welding armor that could shrug off plasma and tearing apart engines to replace them with drives that bent gravity itself. On Titan, engineers whispered prayers before awakening machines older than any of them. The Eclipse drones, swarms of artificial predators built for a war humanity had hoped would never come. In orbit above Earth, the Terran shipyard Olympus glowed like a small sun. Massive vessels hung there, sleek, dark, and armed to the teeth. Each bore names meant to be remembered in terror, retribution, Hell's Wake, Vengeance Dawn. The captains were chosen in secret, veterans of forgotten wars, people who had lost everything. Each of them received the same message, signed by Admiral Ron herself. You are the sword of Earth. The Council believes we fear them, show them what fear truly is. In the colonies, ordinary people prepared too. Miners on Ceres volunteered to load munitions. Farmers on Europa turned greenhouses into supply depots. Even the children on the orbital schools were told to learn emergency drills. Every human, soldier, or civilian understood what was coming. They didn't weep, they didn't panic. They built, they trained, they waited. Because this was what it meant to be human, to endure, to rise when the universe tried to break them. The rest of the galaxy didn't understand. Reports came to the Galactic Council. Strange movements near Sol, increased ship traffic, missing probes. Valor of the Triune dismissed it all. Let them rage, he said to the Assembly. They will burn their own worlds before they can harm ours. But in the lower chambers, whispers began to spread. The merchants who once traded with humans spoke of something vast moving in the void. Small fleets had vanished near Terran space. No distress calls, no wreckage, just empty coordinates where stars flickered wrong. The Sorinth Dominion sent scouts to investigate. None returned. Still, the Council laughed. They believed in numbers, in old power, in history. Humanity was young, they told themselves. Their fleet was small, their empire fragile. They were wrong. 3 weeks after the Envoy's death, the first strike came. The Threne outpost at Luma Verge was one of the most fortified stations in the quadrant, a massive orbital ring defended by 6 battleships and planetary shields. It was meant to guard the border against pirates. At 300 local time, a faint distortion appeared beyond the moon. No signal, no warning. The distortion widened and something stepped through. A Terran warship. It was unlike anything the Threne had ever seen. Matte black, angular, nearly invisible against the stars. Its hull shimmered with ghost light as if it absorbed the universe around it. Before the outpost could even raise shields, the human ship fired. A single shot. White light tore through the ring, slicing it cleanly in half. The explosion lit the planet below like a second sun. Then, just as suddenly, the human ship vanished. No message, no threat, no name, only the wreckage left spinning in the void. By dawn, the Council's emergency session was in chaos. Valor slammed his claws against the floor. A pirate attack, he declared, no proof of Terran involvement. But even as he spoke, another message came. A video, untraceable, encoded in every known language. It showed the destroyed Threne station, and then slowly the image of Earth appeared. Blue, bright, alive. A woman's voice spoke, cold and calm. This is the price of silence. Then the feed ended. By the end of that week, 5 more colonies were gone. No survivors. The Council's fleets scrambled to respond, but every time they arrived, the humans were gone, moving like ghosts through hyperspace. Panic spread, trade routes closed. Old alliances began to crack. Still, the Council refused to admit the truth. They cannot fight all of us, they said. They do not have the numbers. But in the shadows between stars, humanity did not need numbers. They had precision. They had rage. And above all, they had unity. On the bridge of the TSS Retribution, Admiral Ron watched the stars stretch into ribbons as her ship entered hyperspace. The glow of her fleet, hundreds of warships, burned behind her. Her communications officer turned. Admiral, next target confirmed, Sorinth Prime. Ron's lips pressed into a thin line. How many civilians? 4 billion. A long pause, then she said softly, they didn't spare ours. She turned toward the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Ron of the Terran Dominion. Operation Hammerfall begins now. No mercy, no retreat. Let them remember what happens when they spill human blood. All across the fleet, lights flickered red, engines roared. And then the humans vanished into the dark, toward the heart of their enemy. Back in the council chamber, Valor stared at the growing list of destroyed colonies. His 3 faces were pale now, They will stop, he said weakly. They must stop. But deep down, even he knew. The humans had begun something that could not be stopped. The silence was over. The storm had come. The night sky of Sorinth Prime was always beautiful. 1,000 glittering moons reflected off the planet's green oceans. Its capital, Vheron City, stretched across continents, silver towers, glowing bridges, and lights that never dimmed. It was the heart of the Threen Dominion, proud and ancient. The Threen believed their world was untouchable. They were wrong. At 200 local time, the sky rippled. Stars seemed to flicker, like a reflection disturbed by wind. Then the alarms screamed across every continent. Unidentified signatures inbound. Not Council, not Dominion, not known. Commanders rushed into their control towers. Generals barked orders, shields activated, fleets scrambled. Hundreds of defense ships rose into orbit, ready to meet the threat. But what came out of the void was not a fleet. It was one ship. A black silhouette, vast and angular, sliding through space like a shadow given form. Its hull bore no symbols, no flags, only the faint glint of a single word near its prow: retribution. For a moment, the Threen believed it was a bluff. No species, not even humans, would attack a capital world alone. Then the human ship spoke. "This is Admiral Aisha of the Terran Dominion. You executed our envoy. By order of the United Earth Federation, Sorinth Prime is sentenced." The signal cut. The Threen High Command screamed over comms. "Power the shields, fire all batteries, destroy it." But before the command could echo back, the human ship fired its first weapon. A beam of light, no, a line of annihilation stretched from the Retribution's hull to the planet below. It was not fire, it was not energy, it was the absence of both. The ground where it struck melted instantly, oceans boiled, clouds turned to steam. The Threen's defense fleet fired everything they had. Missiles, plasma, gravity mines, the sky filled with explosions. The Retribution moved through them as if walking through rain. Its shields shimmered once, and the rest of their fire died against invisible armor. Inside the ship, Admiral Ron stood on the command bridge, hands clasped behind her back. Her face was calm, but her eyes were cold. Every explosion reflected in her pupils like dying stars. "Target Alpha destroyed," her tactical officer reported. "Secondary strikes complete, planetary grid failing." Ron nodded once. "Continue, no survivors." Down on Sorinth Prime, chaos reigned. In the capital, towers crumbled as shockwaves ripped through the city. Fire and lightning tore the sky apart. People screamed as the world around them split open. Governor Kalthais, leader of the Threen, stood in his palace and watched the horizon burn. "Impossible," he whispered. "We are protected. The Council will not allow this." His advisor's voice trembled. "Sir, the Council isn't responding. All communications are jammed." The governor turned toward the dark sky where the massive Terran ship hung like a black sun. He could almost feel it watching him. "Tell my family to evacuate," he said quietly, "if they can." He knew it was already too late. In orbit, the Threen fleet's last line of defense gathered. The Pride of Vheron, a massive dreadnought, moved to intercept. Its captain, a veteran of 100 campaigns, locked eyes with his officers. "We are the shield of Sorinth. If we fall, our world falls." They launched everything, torpedoes, lances, interceptors. But before a single weapon struck, a shimmer rippled across space. Suddenly, 6 smaller Terran ships appeared around the Retribution. They were escorts, sleek and silent, each armed with strange, glowing cannons. One by one, they fired. In 30 seconds, the Threen fleet was gone. The final blow came from the Retribution's superweapon. "Black Lance online," the gunnery officer said, his voice barely above a whisper. Admiral Ron watched the tactical screen, her face unreadable. "Fire." The ship's main gun charged, its core glowing white-hot. Then a flash. A single beam lanced downward, piercing the planet's equator from pole to pole. On the surface, cities vanished, oceans split, the ground heaved upward as the planet's crust shattered. And then Sorinth Prime began to tear itself apart. Billions of lives blinked out in silence. When it was over, the planet that had once been the pride of an empire was gone, broken into burning fragments, drifting through space. The transmission reached the Galactic Council hours later. Delegates screamed in disbelief as the footage played. A Terran warship, one against thousands, turning a world into dust. Valor of the Triune stood frozen. His three faces were pale. "This cannot be real," he whispered. "No species could wield such power." But the evidence was undeniable. Reports poured in from across the stars. 3 colonies destroyed, fleets gone, outposts silent. And each time the same voice followed. Justice for Mara Ellison. In the darkness of deep space, aboard the Retribution, the crew worked in silence. The smell of ozone and steel filled the air. Every console glowed red from heat. Admiral Ron sat alone in her quarters, the faint hum of the engines vibrating through the walls. She looked at a small hollow frame on her desk, an image of a smiling woman holding a child. Myra Ellison, her sister. She touched the image gently. "They killed you thinking they'd scare us," she whispered. "They thought we bow." She closed her eyes. They never understood what happens when humans lose someone they love. Her communicator chimed softly. "Admiral," said her first officer, "Command has confirmed target destruction. Next orders." Ron opened her eyes, fire returning to them. "Set course for the core. The Council will answer next." "Yes, ma'am." As the line closed, she looked out the viewport. Below, the remains of Sorinth Prime glowed faintly in the void, pieces of rock and fire spinning slowly, fatting into dust. She whispered almost to herself, "We offered peace, you chose fear." Across the galaxy, fear spread faster than light. On every world, people whispered stories. Entire fleets destroyed by a single Terran ship. Colonies wiped away in seconds. The humans, once dismissed as upstarts, had become nightmares made flesh. The Sorinth Dominion collapsed overnight. Survivors scattered to the far edges of space. The Council's unity began to crack, old allies turning on each other, desperate to hide or prepare. And deep within the Terran Command Center on Earth, the President gave a single order to the admirals. No more diplomacy, no more restraint. The Council wanted fear. Give it to them. In the void where Sorinth Prime had once shone bright, only silence remained. No song, no signal, no survivors. Just dust and the whisper of a new name spreading through the stars like a curse. Humanity. The species that burned worlds. The species that remembered. The species that answered. And the galaxy began to understand a truth older than any empire. You can strike a human, you can cage them, you can kill their envoy. But you can never break them. Because when you do, they will come for you, and they will erase you. The galactic core, the shining heart of the known universe, a place of ancient stars and timeless power. Here, the Galactic Council had ruled for 10,000 years, confident that no war could ever reach this sacred center. But the light of the core was dimming. The destruction of Sorinth Prime had changed everything. What began as outrage had turned into terror. Rumors spread across the stars, entire fleets erased, stations lost without a trace, human warships appearing and vanishing like ghosts. And now the humans were coming for the core itself. Valor of the Triune stood on the balcony of the Grand Spire, looking out across the glittering city of Verun, the Council's capital. His three faces were grim, his golden robes torn from endless emergency sessions. "Their numbers can't be that great," said one of his aides. "The humans have no empire to match ours. We outnumber them 100 to 1. Valor turned, eyes burning. "Numbers mean nothing when fear eats your heart," he said. "Our fleets are breaking before they even fight. Entire systems are surrendering without a shot fired. They think the humans are demons, not soldiers." He paused, his voices lowering. "Perhaps they are." Outside, the defensive armada gathered, 5,000 ships from 50 civilizations, each one carrying the pride of its species. Their engines burned bright as they formed a wall of light around the planet, stretching like a steel halo. The greatest fleet in galactic history. They called it the Core Defense Line. 3 days later, the human fleet arrived. They didn't come with trumpets or banners, they came in silence. The void shimmered, and hundreds of Terran ships dropped out of hyperspace at once, sleek black vessels shaped like blades, their hulls glinting with the light of dying stars. In their center floated the TSS Retribution, her engines pulsing with quiet fury. Admiral Aisha Ron stood on her bridge, her uniform sharp, her face hard as steel. Around her, the crew worked in silence. No shouts, no fear, only focus. Her communications officer turned. Enemy fleet detected, Admiral. 5,000 ships confirmed. Their formation is dense around the core. Ron's gaze never wavered, and ours. 1,042, ma'am. A quiet moment passed. Then she said, "Good, that's more than enough." Across the Galactic Armada, alien commanders shouted orders, adjusting formations and locking weapons. The airwaves crackled with panic and bravado. "They're insane," cried a Varun admiral. "They're outnumbered 5-1. "Then crush them," barked another. "End this madness." A blinding light erupted from the Retribution's front batteries as it opened fire first. The shot tore through space like a falling star, cutting across the enemy's front line. 2 cruisers vanished instantly. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone. Then the void came alive. Thousands of ships unleashed hell. Blue plasma streaked across the darkness, red lances of particle fire lit the void, and explosions flared like suns. The core shook under the force of it. But the humans didn't falter. The Retribution's shields absorbed the impact, bending light around her hull. The Terran fleet moved in perfect formation, their ships weaving together like dancers, every maneuver precise and cold. Alien admirals shouted for flanking tactics, desperate to surround them. But the humans had already moved, predicting every shift, every trick. Their AI-controlled destroyers darted between massive battleships, firing from impossible angles. For every Terran ship that fell, 10 Council ships burned. Admiral Ron watched the battle unfold like a storm of light and death. "Focus on their command vessels," she ordered. "Decapitate the fleet." Her weapons officer nodded, targets locked. A moment later, a beam from the Retribution speared through the enemy flagship, a massive golden dreadnought of the Varun Dominion. It cracked open like an egg, spilling fire into the void. The enemy fleet broke. Half of them turned to flee. The other half kept firing, desperate, blind. "Ma'am," her tactical officer said softly, "they're retreating." Ron's eyes narrowed. "No, they're regrouping." Sure enough, the Council fleet fell back into formation around the core's central defense station, a moon-sized fortress known as the Citadel, armed with enough weapons to destroy a planet. The fortress fired. A beam of white energy the size of a mountain cut through space, striking the Retribution square on. The ship shuddered. Alarms blared. "Shields down to 50%, shouted the engineer. "Hull stress critical." Ron held her ground. "Bring the Retribution's core to full power. Prepare the Nova drive." Her crew froze. "Admiral," the officer said quietly, "that'll destroy us too." "I know," she said, "but it'll take them with us." As the Retribution charged, the human fleet pushed forward, buying her time. The void turned into chaos, Terran and alien ships colliding, exploding, spinning into flame. Through the smoke and the fire, the humans advanced. One ship, the TSS Horizon, rammed an enemy battleship, tearing it apart in a burst of light. Another, the TSS Orion, sacrificed itself to destroy a carrier swarm, detonating its core in the middle of the enemy formation. Every human pilot fought like it was their last battle. Because for many, it was. The Retribution's core began to glow, a deep red light pulsing from within, spreading through every corridor. The crew stood silent, watching the light rise around them. Admiral Ron turned to her second-in-command. "Get the message ready." "Yes, ma'am." She looked out the viewport where the Citadel loomed like a mountain of steel. "Broadcast to all frequencies," she said. "Let them hear us." A soft tone sounded as the transmission opened. "This is Admiral Aisha Ron of the Terran Dominion. You killed our envoy, you killed our peace. You wanted to remind us of our place. Allow me to return the favor." She looked to her gunner. "Fire the Nova drive." The Retribution's engines roared to life. A blinding pulse of energy shot outward, expanding faster than light. The Citadel's shields flickered once, then shattered. A second later, the explosion consumed everything. From the surface of Varun, the citizens saw the sky ignite. The night turned white, clouds boiled away. The air shimmered as waves of energy rolled across the planet. And then the stars themselves went dark. When the light faded, the retribution was gone. So was the Citadel. Half the core fleet had vanished with them. In the council chamber, Valor fell to his knees, trembling. "They destroyed the Citadel," he whispered. "They destroyed the core." The aides around him stared at the empty skis. No words, no answers, only silence. In the days that followed, fragments of the battle spread through the galaxy. Footage from Terran drones showed the final moments, the Retribution charging the Nova Drive, the Citadel's destruction, and Ron's last message. Billions watched it in stunned silence. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Council trembled. Because they understood. The humans had not come for victory. They had come for vengeance. And even in death, their admiral had won. In the void where the core once shone brightest, the wreckage of ships drifted silently. Among them floated a single, unbroken Terran flag, its colors scorched but its symbol untouched. A reminder. A warning. Humanity had reached the heart of the galaxy. And they had burned it. Smoke drifted through the marble halls of the Galactic Council, once the pride of 10,000 civilizations. The spire of unity, where great decisions had shaped the stars, now echoed with the sound of fear, alarms, footsteps, and the soft hum of power dying away. Varun's skis burned red. The core was gone, its fleets shattered, and its great fortress reduced to ash. The surviving council members huddled within the chamber, faces pale under flickering lights. The air smelled of ozone and fire. Valor of the Triune stood before the window, staring at the darkness above. His 3 faces trembled with disbelief. "We built our peace on balance," he murmured. "We believed no species would ever destroy the core, not even humans would dare." "They dared," whispered Counselor Rail of the Sorinth survivors, voice trembling. "They destroyed everything." "They destroyed themselves," another cried. "Their admiral died in the blast, their fleet was torn apart." Valor turned, eyes narrowing, "And yet they keep coming." The chamber fell silent. Reports had poured in from every sector, human fleets appearing out of the void, obliterating worlds, dismantling colonies, then vanishing before reinforcements arrived. No pattern, no warning, just vengeance. The Council no longer ruled, it hid. Far above the planet, the Terran's second fleet appeared. Hundreds of ships descended through the smoke, black hulls glowing red with heat from re-entry. Their engines screamed like thunder. At their center, leading the formation, was a new flagship, the TSS Nemesis. The name alone chilled every living being who heard it. It was said to have been built from the wreckage of the Retribution. Larger, stronger, born from the ashes of the admiral who gave her life. On the bridge, Captain Elias Kane stood silently, his jaw set, his eyes fixed on the burning world below. "Orbital defenses neutralized," his first officer reported. "Enemy resistance collapsing." Kane nodded. His voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man who had seen too much war. "Begin descent. Ground forces are clear to engage." "Yes, sir." He looked out the viewport. "Admiral Ron," he whispered to the stars, "we're finishing what you started." The invasion of Varun began with light. Human ships opened their bays, and from the dark fell thousands of drop pods, streaking like meteors through the atmosphere. Each one carried 10 armored soldiers, silent, efficient, and merciless. The Varun defenders tried to resist, but their weapons faltered. Their command centers were already gone. Communications were jammed. On the ground, human infantry moved through the city streets, their armor gleaming black beneath the fires. Their helmets hid their faces, but their movement spoke of calm precision, no rage, no hesitation, just purpose. They were ghosts among ruins. Alien soldiers fired wildly from shattered windows. Human mechs turned to meet them, their cannons cutting through walls like paper. By the hour's end, the defenders of Varun were gone. And the flag of Earth rose over the spire of unity. In the grand chamber, Valor sat alone, his aides scattered or dead. The once golden walls were cracked and blackened. Outside, human dropships circled the skis, casting shadows across the broken city. He could hear them, the steady march of Terran boots growing louder down the hall. He closed his eyes. "So this is how it ends," he whispered. The great doors opened. A team of Terran soldiers entered, their weapons lowered but ready. Behind them walked Captain Kane. His face was pale, his expression calm. "Veiler of the Triune," he said, "you are under arrest by order of the United Earth Dominion." Veiler gave a broken laugh. "Dominion, so you've become what you claim to hate." Kane's eyes were cold. "We became what you made us." He walked closer, his boots echoing on the marble floor. "You murdered our envoy, a woman who came in peace. You thought we'd fear you. You thought we'd submit." He leaned forward. "You never understood us. You never understood humans." Veiler's three faces glared. "We are not monsters. We acted to preserve balance. You are the ones who destroyed it." "Balance," Kane said quietly. "You call it balance when you hold the knife." He turned away, voice low but hard. "Your balance was built on chains, on fear. You ruled because no one was strong enough to stop you, until now." Veiler rose to his feet, trembling but defiant. "And what happens when you rule, when humanity becomes the new tyrant? Will you bring peace, or will you drown the galaxy in your vengeance?" Kane paused. "Peace," he said simply, "but not yours." He signaled to his soldiers, "Take him." The guards stepped forward, binding the alien's arms in magnetic restraints. Veiler did not resist. As they led him away, he looked back once, his three eyes filled with sorrow. "You think you've won," he said, "but victory built on fear will not last." Kane didn't answer. Hours later, as night fell over the ruins of Verun, Kane stood at the top of the Spire of Unity. The city below burned quietly, a sea of red and gold fire reflecting off shattered towers. A soft wind carried the scent of smoke and rain. His communicator buzzed. "Captain," said a voice, "the planet is secured, Council remnants captured or terminated, no resistance left." "Good," he said. "Transmit to High Command, target achieved." "Understood, sir, and the message?" Kane's jaw tightened. "Send it." Across the galaxy, every channel flickered at once. Screens lit up in every home, every ship, every world. A single message appeared, no symbols, no lies, just a human standing against a backdrop of fire. Captain Kane's face. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "To the peoples of the galaxy. Your council is gone, their crimes are answered, their worlds have fallen. Humanity did not seek this war, but you left us no choice. From this day, let it be known, we will not kneel, we will not forgive, we will not be hunted again. This is the end of the old order. A new one begins, forged not in fear, but in strength." He paused, staring into the camera. "You executed one of us. Now you will live forever with the memory of what that cost." The screen went black. Back on Verun, rain began to fall, hissing against the fires. Kane stood there a long time, watching the sky. His armor was scorched, his hands trembling slightly. He thought of Mara Ellison, the woman whose death began it all. Of Admiral Ron, who sacrificed herself to burn the core. Of the billions who followed him here. He whispered, "It's done." But deep inside, he knew it was. The galaxy would never forget what humanity had done, nor would it ever forgive. They had won the war. But peace was another battle altogether. In the ashes of the council chamber, a single inscription remained on the cracked floor, half buried beneath dust and rubble. "We came in peace." The rain washed over it, turning the letters dark and deep. Above, the Terran fleet rose back into the heavens, engines blazing, leaving the dead world behind. And across the stars, species far and wide looked up at the night sky and trembled. Because now they understood. Humanity had become the law of the galaxy. Not through mercy, through fear. The war was over. The galaxy had gone silent. No fleets moved. No stars burned as bright. Every species, from the oldest empire to the youngest colony, watched and waited for what humanity would do next. The council was gone. The core was ash. Sarinth Prime was dust. Verun, the once shining world of peace and order, was now nothing but smoke and ruin. But humanity stood tall among the wreckage. And they were not finished yet. In the deep black between galaxies, a new fortress hung like a scar in space. It was massive, an artificial world forged from the wreckage of conquered fleets. Its name was simple and terrible. Fortress Terra. From here, the newly formed Terran Dominion ruled. It had no parliament, no council. Only one voice, the High Command, led by surviving admirals, generals, and leaders who had seen what the galaxy had done to their people. Inside the command chamber, screens lined the walls, displaying hundreds of systems now under Terran control. The map glowed red where human banners flew. Captain Elias Kane stood in the center, his uniform clean but his eyes tired. He looked older now, gray at the temples, haunted in the eyes. Admiral Solari approached, her voice quiet. "Every species has acknowledged our authority, sir. Some surrendered willingly, others needed convincing." Kane nodded, "And the resistors?" "Handled," she said. "The last 3 holdouts have been pacified. Their fleet no longer exists." Kane exhaled, the sound low and rough. "Then it's done." "No," Solari said softly. "It's only beginning." All across the stars, a new order was being born. The Terran Dominion rebuilt faster than anyone thought possible. Their ships now patrolled trade routes once ruled by alien empires. Their drones restored the stations they had destroyed. But peace did not return. It never truly could. Entire civilizations lived in fear. Every alien child learned to whisper the same words before sleep: "Don't anger the humans." On one frontier world, a merchant of the Neri race knelt before a Terran officer, begging for his people to be spared. "We didn't fight," he cried. "We didn't harm your envoy, we stayed out of the council." The officer's voice was flat. "Then you will stay out of trouble." The merchant trembled. "And if we do?" The officer looked at him without emotion. "Then we'll remind you why no one fights us anymore." Back on Fortress Terra, Captain Kane sat alone in his quarters. The room was dark except for a single hollow screen flickering on his desk. It showed the face of Mara Ellison, the woman whose death had started everything. Her eyes were bright, her smile gentle. He had watched that recording 1,000 times. He had memorized every word of her last speech to the council. "We seek peace," she had said. He shut off the screen and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. They had won. Humanity had done what no species had ever dared, brought the galaxy to its knees. But as he sat there in silence, Kane wondered if peace had been buried with her. Weeks later, the High Command convened to decide the future. "The galaxy must understand," said Admiral Solari. "They must know what happens when they harm us. Fear is not enough. We need obedience." Another admiral shook his head. "Fear is obedience. The two are the same now." Kane stood quietly at the end of the table. "You're both wrong," he said finally. The room turned to him. "Fear fades," he said. "In time they'll forget. They'll rebuild their fleets, whisper in secret, think themselves brave again. We can't rule forever by terror." "Then how do we rule?" asked Solari. "By memory," Kane said. "By making sure the story of what happened is never forgotten, not for 1,000 years." The admirals exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you propose?" Kane's gaze hardened. "We send a message." The message took 1 week to prepare. It would be transmitted across every star system, every outpost, every home. It would override all networks, civilian and military alike. Billions would see it at once. When the day came, the stars seemed to pause. The signal spread faster than light, reaching worlds that had once belonged to enemies, allies, and strangers. On each screen, Captain Elias Kane appeared. His face was calm, his eyes sharp as cold steel. Behind him, the Terran flag hung high, the old blue and white of Earth, marked now by a crimson streak that represented blood spilled for vengeance. His voice was steady. "To every world that hears this message," he began, "I speak as a soldier of Earth. I speak for the Terran Dominion, for every human who has lost, fought, and bled for the right to stand free. You called us violent, you called us reckless, you called us unfit to join your galaxy. You executed our envoy, a woman who came in peace. You silenced her voice with arrogance and fear. Now look at your stars. Tell me, what has your judgment brought you?" He paused, his eyes softened for a brief, fleeting second. "We did not start this war, but we finished it. And we will finish any that follow." The background shifted, showing footage from the war. Sorinth Prime's destruction, the Retribution's final charge, Verun's burning skis. Let this be a lesson carved into history. Humanity will not kneel, not to gods, not to kings, not to councils. We came from a small, fragile world, but we learned to endure. We learned to fight, and when the galaxy tested us, we answered. He leaned forward, his voice turning colder. "You executed one of us, we erased your empire. If peace is what you want, honor it. If war is what you choose, remember this, Earth will always answer. The screen faded to black. One final line appeared in every language known. We came in peace, you taught us fear, now you will live with it. Across the galaxy, silence followed. On some worlds, people wept. On others, they screamed in rage. But no one dared speak against the humans. Not anymore. The message was replayed over and over, etched into memory, burned into every mind. And far above, in the darkness of Fortress Terra, Captain Kane stood by the viewport, watching the stars. Admiral Solari joined him quietly. They'll never forget, she said. That's the point, Kane replied. She hesitated. Do you think she would have wanted this, Mara? Kane didn't answer for a long time. Then quietly, no, but she's gone, and peace died with her. He turned, looking at the stars, so many of them, now burning dimmer than before. They feared us once, he said. Now they'll worship that fear, that's the only kind of peace left. Somewhere, light years away, a child of an alien world looked up at the night sky. The stars glimmered softly, and among them was a faint blue dot, the human homeworld. The child whispered to his mother, will they come here one day? She pulled him close and said, pray they never do. And so the galaxy slept in silence. Every race remembered the same truth. You could erase a world, you could destroy an empire, but you could never break humanity. Because when they lost mercy, they found power. And in that power, the stars themselves learned to tremble. 100 years passed. The stars still burned, but the galaxy was quiet. The great empires were gone, their banners forgotten, their songs turned to dust. In their place stood only one power, the Terran Dominion. Across every world, from the cold moons of the outer rim to the burning suns of the core, one law ruled: do not challenge Earth. Because once, long ago, someone did. And the stars still remembered what followed. The age of silence had begun. Trade continued, ships still crossed the void, and life went on, but no one dared to speak of rebellion. No one dared to whisper of war. The very thought of defying humanity was enough to make entire governments tremble. Children grew up learning about the humans not as conquerors but as legends. Some worshipped them as gods, others feared them as monsters. On alien holoscreens, teachers showed images of the Retribution, the ship that had burned the core. They told their students, this is what happens when arrogance meets Earth. And when those children asked, are the humans still watching? The answer was always the same. Always. In the dark reaches of space, deep beyond the known trade routes, a single Terran ship drifted through the void. Its name was the Vigil. Inside, Commander Lyra Vale sat in the command chair, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. She was young, born decades after the Great War, yet her voice carried the quiet weight of history. Her mission was simple: to patrol, to observe, and to ensure no one forgot who ruled the stars. Her second officer broke the silence. Report from Sector 9, ma'am. The Cathari colonies are showing signs of unrest, minor protests, nothing armed yet. Vale didn't turn her head. Then remind them what happened to the last world that forgot. The officer hesitated. That was 50 years ago. And still burning, she said softly. Humanity had not expanded much in the last century. They didn't need to. The galaxy already belonged to them. Their fleets patrolled the skies like silent guardians or silent threats, depending on who you asked. The Dominion's command was now absolute, but beneath its strength, cracks began to form, small ones, invisible at first. Humanity's unity, once forged by war and vengeance, began to fade in the comfort of victory. The old admirals were gone. The heroes were myths, and younger generations who had never seen the fear of losing everything began to question what they had become. Commander Vale was among them. Sometimes when the ship passed through empty sectors, she would think of the stories her grandmother told her. Of the Earth before the wars, blue oceans, green forests, a world that believed in peace. She wondered if any of that still existed, or if humanity had erased not only its enemies but also its soul. Meanwhile, on a distant alien moon, a meeting took place in the shadows. Leaders of surviving races, small, broken governments, gathered in secret. They called themselves the Reclaimers. An old Threen scholar, her scales dull with age, spoke first. For a century, we've lived in their shadow. Our worlds pay tribute. Our people live in silence. But humanity cannot stay united forever. Their empire will fracture, and when it does... A young Varun leaned forward. We strike. The room stirred, fear mingled with hope. But then a voice spoke from the darkness near the door. Calm, cold. You won't. All eyes turned as two Terran soldiers stepped forward, armor glinting in the dim light. The older one, a captain, looked around the room. You thought we wouldn't notice. You thought we stopped watching. No one moved, no one breathed. The captain smiled, sadly, almost kindly. You misunderstand us. We don't conquer because we want to. We conquer because you make us. He raised his hand. Light filled the chamber. And then there was nothing. The message from the Vigil arrived at Fortress Terra days later. Commander Vale stood before the transmission log. Reclaimer uprising terminated, the report read. No survivors. She stared at the words for a long time. Her officer approached quietly. Another one. She nodded. They keep trying. He hesitated. Do you ever wonder if we're the villains in their stories? Vale didn't answer right away. She looked out at the stars, the endless sea of light. Villains, she whispered. Heroes, gods, monsters, it doesn't matter anymore. We became all of them. Back on Earth, the heart of the Dominion, cities reached the clouds and oceans shone like mirrors. Peace reigned, but it was a cold peace, built on discipline and fear. Statues of Admiral Ron and Ambassador Ellison stood side by side in the Hall of Remembrance. One held a sword, the other an olive branch. Tourists came from across the galaxy to see them, guided by human soldiers. The inscription beneath their feet read, She spoke for peace. She died for peace. We avenged her. Some bowed, some turned away. And those who turned away always felt eyes watching them. Late one night, Commander Vale stood at the edge of the observation deck aboard the Vigil. The stars stretched endlessly before her, beautiful, eternal, silent. She closed her eyes and whispered the words her ancestors had spoken centuries ago. We came in peace. They were old now, almost forgotten. She opened her eyes again and saw her reflection in the glass. Her own uniform, the emblem of the Dominion, stared back at her, a symbol of power and control. For the first time in her life, she felt afraid, not of aliens, not of war, but of what humanity had become. Far below, on a nameless world at the edge of the galaxy, a small group of alien children looked up at the sky. Their parents had told them stories of the humans, stories that sounded like nightmares and prayers at once. One of them asked, Do you think the humans will ever stop? The elder, her eyes weary, answered, When the stars go dark, maybe then. They looked up at the heavens, and there among the constellations they saw it, the faint blue glow of Earth, still shining, still watching. Centuries later, historians would call it the Age of Silence, not because the galaxy was peaceful, but because no one dared to speak against the Terrans. Every whisper of rebellion was erased, every dream of freedom was buried. And yet, in the quiet corners of forgotten worlds, the story of the Envoy still survived. The woman who stood in the council chamber and said, We seek peace. Some said that one day, when humanity finally looked back at what they had done, those words would return. That somewhere deep within them, beyond the steel and fire, the heart of the old Earth still beat. But for now, the stars remained still, the silence held, and the galaxy lived in awe and fear of one truth, written into history by war and blood. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not forget. Humanity rules the stars. And in the echo of the endless night, a whisper remained, soft, distant, eternal. We came in peace. You taught us fear. Now you will live with it.